Hello everyone, my name is Ritesh Pandey and in this class, this video, we'll carry on our discussions on colligative properties. So last class, in class 1, we got started with the vapor pressure of an ideal solution. We saw how the first colligative property was relative lowering in vapor pressure on adding a non-volatile solute to a liquid. We saw there was a lowering in vapor pressure and that relative lowering in vapor pressure was equal to the mole fraction of the solute. I did tell you a property which depends only upon the count or number of solute particles will be a colligative property. So that was the first colligative property, which was relative lowering of vapor pressure. Now the first colligative property, which is relative lowering of vapor pressure, and the corresponding result was P naught minus Ps upon P naught was equal to the mole fraction of the solute. And there were 3 more colligative properties left. I told you there are all in all 4 colligative properties in our syllabus. We'll begin with the second colligative property today, which is actually a result of or the consequence of the first colligative property. So the second property we begin with today is going to be what's called an elevation in boiling point. Elevation in boiling point. And elevation in boiling point, which will be on adding a non-volatile solute, you see the boiling point of the solution will increase. You have known about this before class 11. We have been talking about this in the past. We do know seawater or water having impurity, dissolved impurity, has higher boiling point than 100 degrees Celsius at 1 atmosphere. So this is something we have known in the past. There is an elevation in boiling point on adding a non-volatile solute. Boiling point increases, and we'll see how this is related to a decrease in vapor pressure. We'll see how it's related to a decrease in vapor pressure, but let's learn a few facts about boiling point first. Now, some of you might know, and this is like a very basic fact, that the temperature at which a liquid boils, you know, boiling point is the temperature when a substance changes from liquid form to vapor form. And when you see water boiling in a transparent vessel, we do see small little bubbles, you know, they'll rise to the surface and they'll burst. That is a physical manifestation of the fact that boiling point is the temperature. Boiling point is the temperature at which vapor pressure of the liquid which is boiling, vapor pressure of the liquid is equal to the external pressure. You also call it the superincumbent pressure, and naturally this is equal to 1 atmosphere under normal conditions. So under normal conditions, at 1 atmosphere, boiling point of a liquid will be the temperature at which the vapor pressure of the liquid is equal to 1 atmosphere. So we know water boils at 100 degrees Celsius. So naturally, at 100 degrees Celsius or 373 Kelvin, we can write the vapor pressure of pure water. Will be 1 atmosphere. 1 atmosphere or 76 centimeter mercury. Now what happens if you add some impurity to it? When you add a non-volatile solute, vapor pressure decreases. We are talking about decrease or lowering of vapor pressure. So naturally, when vapor pressure decreases, the vapor pressure of a solution is less than that of the pure solvent. It will need more temperature. It will need higher temperature for the vapor pressure of the solution to reach 1 atmosphere. Now all of this could be very beautifully explained graphically. So let's plot a graph, you know, where say we are plotting the vapor pressure, which like any kind of pressure is proportional to temperature. Now normally if you have a plot like this, say for a pure liquid, and if this is equal to 1 atmosphere, if this is equal to pressure 1 atmosphere, then certainly the corresponding temperature would be called the boiling point, Now this is involving any liquid. This is involving any liquid. Right now I am taking it as the solvent because the moment I put a solute, I know there will be a lowering in vapor pressure. So if this is for the solvent, and this is the corresponding boiling point, for the solution, if this is the vapor pressure curve, for a solution it's lower than that of the solvent, that of the solvent. Naturally, this will become 1 atmosphere, at a higher temperature. So this is graphically very easily understood. That if this is the boiling point of the normal solvent, this TB prime would be the boiling point of the solution, and you can see this is a direct consequence of lowering of vapor pressure. I can give you a bigger view. It's a very popular graph. You'll want to copy all of this at your convenience, and as I told you, I can give you a bigger view. So suppose we are plotting pressure with temperature in Kelvin or Celsius. Like any form of pressure, it will be proportional to temperature. So if this is for the pure liquid, which I am calling the solvent now, the temperature at which it's equal to 1 atmosphere, would be the boiling point. So this is TB, boiling point. Now, when you add a solute, naturally the solution will have a lower vapor pressure. And for the solution, if this is the corresponding curve, for the solution, if this was for the solvent, the continuous line, the dotted one, is for the solution which has a lower vapor pressure. This will reach 1 atmosphere at a higher temperature. So this would be the elevated boiling point. The higher boiling point. And you can see the increase in boiling point. Is a direct result of, or the consequence of, a decrease in vapor pressure. So this is very easily understood. TB prime is more than TB. And the difference between TB prime and TB will be called delta TB, which is the elevation in boiling point. This elevation in boiling point is found to be proportional to molality of the solute. So this is what makes it a colligative property. Certainly we have understood that compared to a solvent, solution having a non-volatile solute, because of a lowering in vapor pressure, will boil at a higher temperature. It will take higher temperature for the vapor pressure to reach 1 atmosphere value. And the difference, the increase, is called elevation in boiling point. We'll see this delta TB will be proportional to molality. We have not named any solute here. So for different solutes having the same molality, we'll have the same elevation in boiling point, and naturally it will be a colligative property. This elevation in boiling point, because it is proportional to the count of solute particles, it will be a colligative property. Now we'll want to talk about this equation in details. So yet again you will want to copy all of this at your convenience, and we'll want to begin with this result, which we have seen is a colligative property. Different solution of the same solvent, mind you, having same molality will have the same elevation in boiling point, and thus the same elevated boiling point. So if I begin with the result delta TB proportional to molality, first of all we bring a proportionality constant, which is called KB. Now this KB is popularly called boiling point elevation constant, or it's called ebullioscopic constant. That is the other name, ebullioscopic constant. Boiling point elevation constant or ebullioscopic constant. Naturally, this will be a constant. For a given liquid. For water, this KB is going to be a very common value, 0.52. We'll come to the unit. And if suppose I write delta TB is equal to Kb into, now how do you write molality? Weight upon molecular weight, number of moles of the solute, weight upon molecular weight, number of moles of the solute, small letters always for the solute upon capital W, weight of the solvent, number of moles per gram of solvent, number of moles per gram of solvent into 1000. Number of moles per gram of solvent into 1000 is number of moles per 1000 gram of the solvent. Number of moles per 1000 gram of the solvent. Now naturally the unit of molality would be moles per kg, it will be molal per kg, moles per kg, and the unit of Kb has to be 0.52 in this case, Kelvin per molal, Kelvin per molal. Per molal can be written as, if molality is number of moles per kg, it could be kg per mole, it could be kg per mole, and as I told you in problem solving, this will become a very common value. So this is how we'll feed the values, this is how we'll feed the values, small letters for the solute, capital letters for the solvent. I mean this is understood, I believe. Molality is number of moles per gram into 1000 is number of moles per 1000 gram or per kg of the solvent. It's a colligative property. Now you'll want to copy this at your convenience, as I told you. Per molal could also be written as per mole. Alright. For different liquids, Kb will be a different value, and we'll talk about the third colligative property now. We'll want to copy this at your convenience. Very simple. Just feed the values and you'll get the elevation in boiling point. The third colligative property is depression in freezing point. The third colligative property is depression in freezing point. I can easily give you a graphical representation here as well. But very much like what we had in boiling point, where the boiling point increased, here you will see a decrease in freezing point when a non-volatile solute is added to a solvent. And if the corresponding expression is delta TF, this is also found to be proportional to molality of the solute. Yet again, it's proportional to the count or the concentration of solute particles only. So it's a colligative property. I can write this as delta TF is equal to Kf into molality, where this Kf is called freezing point depression constant, or it's also called cryoscopic constant. Like Kb, this will be constant for a given liquid, For a given liquid, it will be a constant, and we'll see for water, Kf H2O will be 1.86. Kf water, I believe, will be 1.86 if I am not mistaken. You'll see this value so very often. In different questions, that 0.52, 1.86, they kind of become very common values. For water, it is 1.86, and yet again, you can represent molality as Kf into W by M upon capital W into 1000. We have known about seawater. Boiling at a higher temperature. And we have also seen in countries where there is a lot of snowfall. During winters, one way of clearing the snow in the streets or in the roads is you sprinkle salt. And naturally, when you sprinkle salt, any day water and ice stay in equilibrium. So the salt which is sprinkled, would kind of give you a concentrated solution there, and the melting point of ice, the freezing point of water or the melting point of ice will drop. Now suppose if it drops to a value which is equal to the atmospheric temperature, naturally, there is snowfall and everything is frozen, because in those countries, the temperature is much below 0 degrees Celsius. So when you sprinkle salt, you make sure that, because of a high concentration of salt there, the freezing point or the melting point decreases, and from 0 degree, if it drops to the atmospheric temperature, normally ice will start melting. So these facts, which are like very practical ways and very practically commonly known facts, are those which we are told much before class 11. Only now we realize that they are proportional to the count of solute particles, so they are all colligative properties. As I told you, Kf, Kb are going to be constants for a given liquid, and one common way of calculating Kf, Kb for a liquid, because for water 0.52 and 1.86 are recalled instinctively. In case you have to calculate Kf and Kb for some unknown liquid, if you have to calculate Kf and Kb for some unknown liquid, the general expression is K is equal to RT square upon 1000 L, where L is the latent heat, of the process. For a change of state, be it boiling or melting, for a change of state, some amount of heat goes, to bring that change of state without a change in temperature, you call it latent heat. So this is how you can calculate the K for any liquid, where R is the universal gas constant, T is the temperature in Kelvin. Now if this is Kb, this has to be the boiling point, and if this is the boiling point, this has to be the latent heat of vaporization. Certainly, for Kf, I'll want to write RT square, which is the freezing point, and 1000 L, I can call it LV, heat of vaporization. I'll call it LF, which will be the latent heat of, this will be the latent heat of freezing, or it's also called latent heat of melting. So the corresponding values are known for water. This is like 80 calorie per gram, and this is like 527 or something calorie per gram for water. This is 80 calories, this is 527, but for an unknown liquid, you can calculate Kb, Kf. If you feed the data, just make sure that R and latent heat are written in the same unit. Latent heat is always studied per gram. So in case instead of latent heat, there is a term involving enthalpy, which is per mole. So if the data is given per gram, it will be like written in this form. If it's given per mole, then the only change will be, if it's given per mole, it becomes the delta H, and you will want to write the molecular weight here. So this is the only change here. If the value is given per gram, it's all right, but if it's given per mole, you will want to put molecular weight here. Naturally, this upon this will become the heat exchange per gram. Capital M certainly is the molecular weight, which is the gram molecular weight. But this is a more common expression, and it's very unlikely that they'll not give you the value of Kb, Kf. These are like extra pieces of information you might want to have, but otherwise generally in a problem they give you the value of Kb, Kf. You just have to write for the concentration and get the increase in boiling point or the decrease in freezing point. So with this we come to the fourth colligative property. This was the third colligative property. You'll keep copying everything at your convenience, and we'll come to the fourth colligative property. Which is osmotic pressure. I told you in the beginning of the topic, that we'll begin with like the elementaries. We'll talk about the first few colligative properties which are there in the syllabus. Once we take care of the school board syllabus, some basic questions on the same, and then we do some advanced discussion on all of this, and a lot could be learnt and taught regarding some very universal forces of nature. Because realize, in this topic what we are taking up are universal processes like boiling, freezing, melting, and now osmosis, which we all are taught yet again much before class 11. Now osmotic pressure has to be related to the phenomena called, or the process called osmosis, which is diffusion of solvent molecules across a semi-permeable membrane. Now semi-permeable membrane, I'm going to write SPM every time, semi-permeable membrane. So we taught a little bit about osmosis, diffusion, yet again much before class 11, diffusion across a semi-permeable membrane, and the picture which comes to mind is a symbolic representation of this kind. Suppose there are two solutions A and B. If there are two solutions A and B, both aqueous, two solutions A and B, and you add some salt to the two solutions. You add some salt to the two solutions, naturally from the very look, you can figure out that between A and B, B is more concentrated. So both are aqueous solutions, and right from the way I am giving you the symbolic diagram, you realize B is more concentrated, this contains more salt. So if B is more concentrated, this contains more salt, this is dilute, this is concentrated. If A and B are allowed to interact, recall what is diffusion. Diffusion is a natural property. You know, it happens against some natural forces of physics, like, you know, I do tell you about diffusion of gases happening even against gravity. So it's a natural tendency of particles to diffuse from higher concentration to lower concentration. If A and B are allowed to interact, naturally from A to B, because this contains more water, you will find water moving from A to B, and the salt moving from B to A. Naturally, if they are allowed to interact, water will move from A to B because it contains more water, and salt will move from B to A because this contains more salt. Now, if something happens in both the directions, you cannot study the rate of the process. And again, because of various factors, you take this as a semi-permeable membrane. When you take it as a semi-permeable membrane, now this is cut out. Semi-permeable membrane, allows only solvent molecules, only solvent particles are allowed to diffuse. So you taught semi-permeable membrane will only allow solvent particles to diffuse. Solute particles will not diffuse. So salt will not move, only water will move from A to B. And this is called osmosis. Diffusion of solvent across a semi-permeable membrane. The pressure with which osmosis happens is called osmotic pressure. And trust me, both the direction of osmosis and the rate and the pressure at which it happens is because of the salt content here. This is naturally more concentrated, contains more salt. And we'll figure out that a solution having more salt, more concentration of salt, is going to have a higher osmotic pressure. So between A and B, B having more concentration is supposed to have higher osmotic pressure. A has lower osmotic pressure, and naturally you will find diffusion happening, osmosis happening from A to B, because B with more concentration of the salt has higher osmotic pressure. We'll see this is also a colligative property. I've briefed a little bit about osmotic pressure, the pressure with which osmosis happens. Naturally, between two liquids, it will be the difference between the osmotic pressure of A and B. B in this case has higher osmotic pressure. We're going to learn terms like isotonic, hypotonic, hypertonic. Some of you might have already known this. But naturally, both the direction and the rate at which this happens is because of the count of the particles here. They're also studied under a particular name. They're called Van 't Hoff's rule. They're called Van 't Hoff's rule or Van 't Hoff's law. The couple of Van 't Hoff's law. Again, you'll want me to remove this clutter. And a couple of Van 't Hoff's law regarding osmosis are Van 't Hoff's law or Van 't Hoff's rule, or I'm calling them Van 't Hoff's rule, Van 't Hoff's rules or laws. Regarding osmosis, 1. Osmosis is proportional to the number of solute particles, So this talks about osmosis being a colligative property. This makes it a colligative property. Instead of osmosis, I should write osmotic pressure. osmotic pressure is proportional to the number of solute particles, and like any pressure, this will be proportional to temperature as well. This will be proportional to temperature as well. From these two laws, I'll get this osmotic pressure, which is represented by a pi proportional to C. I'll bring a universal. I'll bring a constant, which is the universal gas constant. So this will be like pi is equal to CRT, or I can write RCT. First of all, I'll write proportional to C and T, where C is the concentration, C is the concentration, C is the concentration in molality. In molarity, the most popular unit is molarity, moles per liter, and I'll bring a constant like R into frame. This is very similar to how we write PV is equal to nRT, because concentration would be number of moles by volume. So pi V nRT would be very similar to PV nRT for the gaseous laws, and this R is the same universal gas constant. It's the same universal gas constant with the same value of 0.082 liter atmosphere per Kelvin per mole. But the fact is, this is proportional to the count of particles. It's proportional to the count of particles, and because it's proportional to the count of particles, it's also a colligative property. Now, naturally, between A and B, the one having higher osmotic pressure, is called hypertonic. The one having lesser osmotic pressure is called hypotonic. Osmotic pressure is proportional to temperature, that's expected, but it's proportional to number of solute particles. The constant is the same universal gas constant, and that makes it a colligative property. I'm going to rewrite this equation, and I'm going to remove this clutter first. Hypotonic, because this is higher osmotic pressure, this is lower osmotic pressure. If there are two solutions having same osmotic pressure, I'll give you one more term. The two are called isotonic. The term isotonic would be if the two solutions, isotonic solutions are those two solutions with the same osmotic pressure. Now, osmotic pressure could be either defined as the pressure at which osmosis happens. It could be defined as the pressure with which osmosis happens, or it is so many times defined as the pressure which is applied in reverse direction. Stops osmosis. So naturally, if you had the solvent molecules moving from A to B in the previous example, if the solute particles were moving, if water was moving from A to B, the pressure which you need to apply over B, so that osmosis stops, is a very popular way of defining osmotic pressure. It could be defined as the pressure with which osmosis happens, or so many times it's defined as the pressure, if applied in reverse direction, can stop osmosis. And the reason it's defined this way so very commonly is because that is how it finds its application in the real life. One application of osmotic pressure is purification of water. All the currently popular water purifiers, the Kent water purifier you see in the marketing ads, the water purifier has RO, UV is ultraviolet, and RO is reverse osmosis. I'll kind of just repeat it one more time. If this was solution A and B, this was more concentrated, this was less concentrated, this was diluter, and you had water moving from A to B. If this is how water was moving, if you apply this pressure, if you apply osmotic pressure here, osmotic pressure is also defined as the pressure which, if applied in the opposite direction, osmosis will stop. osmosis will stop. So if water was moving from A to B, osmosis is happening from A to B. Osmotic pressure is either the pressure with which osmosis is happening, or if it is applied over B, the process will stop. Naturally, on applying a pressure more than the osmotic pressure, on applying a pressure which is more than the osmotic pressure, you will want to listen carefully and you will understand why it's more often defined in the way I have written here. You put osmotic pressure here and the process will stop. If you apply a pressure more than the osmotic pressure, you will find water moving in the reverse direction. So on applying pressure which is more than the osmotic pressure, you can kind of bring water from here to here. Now this will require pressure more than, this will require pressure more than the osmotic pressure of the process. And this is how water is kind of purified. You know, from a concentrated to a less concentrated solution is about water getting purified. This is also called desalination of seawater. Desalination of seawater. So when you have to, you know, take water from seawater, get rid of salt, you carry out what's called reverse osmosis. And you get rid of impurities, you know, in all the water purifiers by the RO. Water purifier having RO is nothing but reverse osmosis. This is reverse osmosis, which requires a pressure more than the osmotic pressure. Unfortunately, if a person has a renal failure, if the kidneys are not working, then the process of dialysis, you know, the medical condition of dialysis is also based on reverse osmosis. So that's also an application of knowing osmotic pressure. And with this, we have kind of seen all the four kind of qualitative properties in our syllabus. I'll quickly write all the relevant equations. I'll quickly write all the four relevant equations, and you will see one fact common to all of them. So I'll write all the four qualitative properties here. First is relative lowering of vapor pressure, and the equation was P naught minus Ps upon P naught is equal to small n upon small n plus capital N. Now which is almost equal to small n upon capital N, which is Wm upon capital W capital M. The second one was elevation in boiling point, delta Tb is equal to Kb into molality, W by M upon capital W into 1000. Third one, a depression in freezing point is del Tf is equal to Kf into W by M upon capital W into 1000. And the fourth one, for osmotic pressure, I'm going to write pi is equal to CRT, which is C is number of moles, N by V RT. And if I write pi V is equal to nRT, pi V is equal to nRT, N might well be written as, number of moles might well be written as weight upon molecular weight, Now if you see carefully, in all the four qualitative properties, the molecular weight of the solute, here again the molecular weight of the solute is kind of in the denominator. Certainly it will come in the denominator. In the real equation it will come in the denominator. So in all the cases the molecular weight of the solute is kind of inversely proportional to the colligative property. The molecular weight of the solute is inversely proportional to the colligative property. And the reason I wanted to speak about it right now is the next segment of this topic, and generally it's taught under the head abnormal molecular weight. You know, I'm kind of I do not believe in that way of, you know, defining or framing the topic. You know, that is how it's framed in most of the textbooks. The approach is, they call it expected and abnormal molecular weight. There is nothing like abnormal molecular weight, but so far we have seen cases of a solute which is non-volatile but a non-electrolyte. You know, all this is going to hold true if it's a non-electrolyte, if it's not dissociating or associating in water. Certainly, if a solute starts dissociating or associating in water, if a solute starts dissociating or associating in water, then the count of particles will change. The count of particles will be different from the expected count of particles. The molality and the molarity will be different. So now when we bring electrolytes, you know electrolytes, electrolysis, particles carrying charge, so naturally they dissociate. They need to dissociate, to move in an electric field. So when we talk about electrolytes, solutes which are electrolytes, particles, solute which dissociate or associate in water or a solvent, then there will be some adjustment required in all these equations because the count of particles will change. And there we'll see how the colligative property, it's always proportional to the number of particles. Colligative property is always proportional to the number of particles. So for any reason, if the number of particles increases, colligative property will increase. With more number of particles, there will be more lowering in vapor pressure, more higher boiling point, lower freezing point, more osmotic pressure. So more number of particles will mean more colligative property and lesser molecular weight. Lesser molecular weight. So the molecular weight, which is a very important aspect. So many times these equations are used to calculate the molecular weight of the solute. I told you in the past. And with the number of particles increasing, colligative property would be more and the molecular weight obtained will be lesser. I do not call it abnormal molecular weight because sooner than later we need to learn the facts about how an electrolyte is going to change these equations. It's absolutely normal but a little different from the non-electrolytes. So let's take up the last segment of this topic. I'll want to kind of finish this off in this particular video, and in the next video we'll take up some theoretical topics of interest like ideal, non-ideal solution. So again, with all the 4 in one frame, I've been able to explain how colligative properties and molecular weight is always inversely proportional, and with number of particles increasing, colligative property will increase, more lowering in vapor pressure, more elevation in boiling point, higher boiling point, more depression in freezing point, lower freezing point, and if the equations are used to find the molecular weight, you'll find the molecular weight less than expected. Now all of this is studied under the head Van't Hoff factor, Van't Hoff factor, Van't Hoff factor. I'll avoid calling abnormal molecular mass. I'll rather call expected and experimental. Expected and experimental. Experimental will be the same as observed. Experimental will be the same as observed. Experimental, expected and experimental or observed molecular weight or molecular mass. And right away, any colligative property, experimental upon colligative property, expected, experimental means observed, would certainly be equal to molecular weight obtained by using these expressions. Expected upon experimental, because I did tell you that the two are inversely proportional, and colligative property is proportional to the number of particles. So I can write this as number of particles, atoms, molecules, ions, number of particles, experimental or under the real case, this is the real case, upon number of particles, expected, and this ratio is called I. This is the Van't Hoff factor, I. This is the Van't Hoff factor. So what is Van't Hoff factor? Popularly represented as a small I. It is the ratios colligative property experimental observed upon colligative property expected. Naturally, this will be inversely proportional to the molecular weight values, and this is understood. This is proportional to number of particles. So number of particles in the real experimental case being more, colligative property would be more, and we'll see molecular weight will be lesser. So very naturally, we'll want to talk about the two cases, and certainly we're talking about electrolytes now. We're talking about electrolytes, solute which dissociate or associate, solutes which dissociate or associate. We'll talk about dissociation first. Now if a solute dissociates, an electrolyte which dissociates, if we talk about dissociation, you have AN, suppose breaking into A plus, and n such particles. Now first of all, in this case n is called the order of dissociation. In this case n is called the order of dissociation. You were expecting one particle, had it not ionized, had it not dissociated, it dissociates by alpha, so that you have alpha plus, and all in all n alpha particles. You know about alpha. Alpha is certainly the degree of dissociation. We have been knowing about it since the days of equilibrium. Alpha is the number of moles dissociated per mole. So when you start with one mole, whatever dissociates is alpha. So if it breaks into n particles, n is the order of dissociation with a degree of dissociation alpha. You were expecting one particle, but what is the actual number of particles? So I can write this is experimental. This is the actual number of particles, experimental. 1 minus alpha plus n alpha, 1 minus alpha plus 1 alpha, which is 1 plus n minus 1 alpha, 1 plus n minus 1 alpha. This is the actual number of particles. And right away, you'll want to copy these two. You'll want to copy about n and alpha. And for dissociation, I'll get I, which I have already explained as the colligative property experimental upon expected, and the reverse for the molecular weight, as experimental number of particles are 1 plus n minus 1 alpha. And expected is 1. You are expecting it to be 1. So this is for the expected value, and this is the experimental observed real value. So for dissociation, the ratio 1 plus n minus 1 alpha will give you value of I. Almost in maximum problems, in most of the problems, n is equal to 2. So with n is equal to 2, you might get something like 1 plus alpha. But if it's breaking into 3 particles, CaCl2, then it will be 1 plus 2 alpha, and so. N is the number of particles it's breaking into, alpha is the degree of dissociation. With some examples, this will be understood, and this will be the ratio of colligative property experimental expected, and the reverse for the molecular weight. The second case could be of ionization. The second case could be of association. This is for dissociation. The second one is for association. Association is when, suppose an electrolyte is polymerizing. It could be forming a dimer, a trimer. So the second case would be of association. If you recall, we had done something of this kind in equilibrium as well. If you remember, we had done something of this kind in equilibrium. In one of the videos of chemical equilibrium, which was about finding the molecular weight if a substance is associating or dissociating. So there was a video on, how with association or dissociation molecular weight was differing. Examples taken where PCl5SO3. So you will recall, something very similar was done there. Association is n particles of A, which is A plus A plus A plus A, kind of associate to AN. Here again, n would be the order of association, alpha could be the degree of dissociation, and if this was 1 to begin with, if it goes by alpha, the number of particles formed here will be alpha by n. And the simplest way to remember, if this is for dissociation, for association, it can be proved easily. You can prove it at your convenience. If for dissociation, it's n minus 1 alpha. This is 1 plus 1 by n minus 1 alpha. So this is the easiest way to remember this. Naturally by 1. This is the easiest way to remember this. If this is 1 plus n minus 1 alpha, dissociation के लिए n है तो association के लिए 1 by n है. This again is colligative property experimental upon expected, or molecular weight expected upon experimental. So I think all of this will help you in solving problems of various types, and with this we kind of come to a formal end to most of the equations which we'll need in solving problems from this topic. From the upcoming classes or the videos, we'll go back to the theoretical conceptual portion of a lot of stuff from this topic, but I'm sure this will help you in solving all questions, and with the number of problems solved, I keep on saying in physical chemistry, we learn half this stuff in theory and much more in solving problems. So see you in the problem solving sessions. This much for the time being. Thank you so much.